Okay guys, so today we're going to go over some cold water exposure. Cold water exposure has been really big over the last few years. I've been doing it myself for about 3, and I often get asked about the benefits and the reasons of why, how, who, what, when, and where. And today I want to go over a little bit of that with you and give you a little bit more insight into why we'd want to integrate cold water exposure into our routine. So the first thing and the biggest thing that I find that's so great about it is that we're using, it's a physical challenge for us. The same way that we want to make sure that we're challenging our cardiovascular system and our musculoskeletal system with the way we exercise and we make sure we get in our cardio and our weight training, we're also now training our thermoregulation system. So we're getting our body used to being outside of that room temperature where we're usually so comfortable. And the nice thing about it is that this stress on the body it's non-weight bearing. It's not affecting your joints. It's not affecting your muscle tissue. It's actually a really safe way to give your body a little extra challenge. It's also really great because there's a whole bunch of metabolical changes that come from that too. We start to notice that we get a big release of some hormones that let our bodies feel alive. Norepinephrine is released when we get into cold water. When we put cold water on ourselves, we get a big release of dopamine, which really helps to it's those feel-good, happy chemicals. And then we also, of course, are getting that mindset, that fortification, that grit. When we do something that is kind of uncomfortable, we don't always necessarily want to do, but we do it anyway. So when we're looking at this, for the how, this is going to really depend on the individual. So it might start off with starting off with lower temperature showers and then maybe getting colder and colder and colder. Maybe we're going to start to do some hot and cold contrast to make it a little bit easier for us. Or, for some individuals, maybe we're going to just go outside and start like that with just walking around with our sweater off and get used to just being a little bit more chilly. Then when we're looking at timing of the day, when we want to do this, we could start in the morning or we could start at night. There's no real rationale for kind of having to choose. Some people will even do a little cold dip in the morning and a cold shower before they go to bed. This cold exposure is, again, it's good for our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems because we're kind of revving that motor up when we get in the water, and then when we get back and we start to warm up, we're starting to calm it back down again. It's like that really good example of when, speeding up actually helps us slow down. So we can do this in a couple different ways. We can go into cold baths or cold tubs. We could play with our shower and, turn the water down nice and cold for the last 30 seconds. Or we could just do something very natural and just go and bathe in the ocean. And often we can start with, just a couple minutes and then start to work our way up in time. So I'm going to go and do a little cold dunk at Third Space cold tubs right now. And I'll take you guys through all of my prep for pre and post tubbing. So enjoy. Oh, hey, you caught me. I'm just getting ready for my cold dunk here on the roof at Third Space Movement, and I was just thinking to myself, there's so many different ways that people prepare to get into cold water. Some people use breath work. Myself, I personally just like to go into it first thing in the morning. It's kind of like my opening ritual. The most important thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we're in a safe place and that the water is at a good temperature for us. So first thing we do is we go over and we check it with our hand thermometer. Yep, that's freezing cold. Lucky for us that the last few nights it's gotten really, really cold, so we didn't have to put any ice in here, but there was a small film of ice this morning, so the morning sun's kind of warmed it up just a little bit for me. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to think about kind of putting my headspace around this idea that I'm only going to be in here for a couple minutes, and once I'm done, it's going to feel so much better when I'm getting out and when I'm moving around. When I finish my dunk, I'm going to use a little bit of small intentional movement and some breath, very similar to like your pranayama in yoga, which is going to be focused on nasal breathing, and it's going to help me warm my body up afterwards too. When I slip into the ice or when I slip into the water, I'm going to really do a conscious effort to make sure that I'm controlling my breath and I'm not gasping right away. We're trying to kind of fight that sympathetic response. So mind over matter, stepping into the water. We know it's cold, it's going to feel cold. Getting down up into our neck. And then once we settle in, steadying our breath. I like to kind of keep my gaze just in front And even though it feels really cold right now, I'm still thinking to myself about how warm I am inside. It actually is pretty warm right now. If you believe it, it's true. Nice big breaths in through the nose and out through the nose. I think of this is like my morning meditation time, where I'm just focusing on thinking about all the things I can control and letting go of the things I can't. So I'll spend anywhere between 3 to 10 minutes, depending on how cold it is. For today, and considering how everything's been going, I'm going to do a smaller dunk. And that's mostly because, like I was talking to you about before, like this is a stress for the body, just like any other stress. And so I don't want to be over exercising right now when I want to keep my immune system sharp. I don't want to be over dipping and over dunking. So I'm probably only going to do about 2 to 3 minutes. Even though it feels pretty comfortable right now and I could go for a little bit longer, sometimes it's just nice to stop before we feel like we're at our threshold. So even there, we've probably been in here for just over 90 seconds or so, and it's starting to feel quite a bit easier right now. My body's relaxing a little bit. I'm a little less tense. We'll just stay in for a couple more, and then when I go to get out, I'm going to show you guys kind of my normal routine. I start off with, first of all, I don't dry off right away. I let the water and the ambient temperature warm me back up a little bit, because the air is going to kind of have a little bit of a warming effect. Unless it's really windy, it's pretty nice, because today it's actually pretty calm. So when we go to get out, just move nice and slow, keep my breath nice and controlled. And I'll start by just kind of walking around in place. Shake my hands out a little bit. And I'll reach my arms up overhead. Nice big stretch. And then, depending on how cold the water is or how cold my body's feeling, I'll start with a couple small little movements back and forth. So I'll think about kind of engaging through my legs and through my core. And if I'm really trying to warm myself up quickly, I'll take some of those deep pranayama-like breaths, thinking about building up that little bit of fire in my belly and keeping my core nice and tight and tense. So when I move around, I might do something like some push-ups or some squats. I might drop down and exhale on the way up. I get the same thing with the arm reaches, reaching up. So just a little bit of movement. I can get as creative as I want with it. There's no real rules when it comes to this, just anything that's going to start to get some of the blood flowing back into my muscles. The other thing that we want to really be cautious of when we're doing this is we don't want to have what's called an after drop, which is when we just kind of put our towel ourselves up and then just go right back into sitting in our car, or without adding any kind of movement or prep afterwards. And that's what happens when our peripheral blood supply and our shunted midline blood supply starts to mix together, and we get this really, really quick drop of core temperature. So we don't want that to happen. We just want that kind of restriction to stay where it is until we start to actually create a little bit of heat and start to warm our whole system up. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys. And if you want to start giving cold dunks or cold showers a try, I highly recommend you just start low and build up, and then hopefully one of these days I'll see you down at the ocean. Till next time, Third Space out.